You're going to find pretty quickly as you start developing content for your site that working with tables in WordPress is going to be something that'll be very important to you. And I'm sure you're familiar with tables, but essentially if you look here, you can see that I've got a table that has a cell for this text and a cell for this image. And then there are 4 cells across the top here. So these are going to be our columns as they go down and rows as they go across. It's just like an Excel spreadsheet. But another example of how I use tables is within my course descriptions. And you can see that I've got a table border around some of this, and I wanted more room for the text here, and I wanted less room for the image and some of the benefits on the right side. And I've got more tables here for the buy now buttons and a sneak peek video, as well as all this content down here. I've got the testimonials from this course, things about what you'll learn, and so on. And all these are using tables. And then as you scroll down even further, you'll see that there are 2 columns here with the digital photography course syllabus. Now, the reason that I use these tables is so that I can choose how I want my content distributed on my page. If I weren't using tables here, I'd have a real hard time with the text editor that we have in WordPress getting things to look a little bit nicer. And what I mean by that is, imagine if Module 1 and this text right here went all the way across the page. I'm sure you've seen that before on websites, and it just doesn't look very good. When I have this much content, I just want to kind of separate it out into nice manageable columns. I don't want somebody to have to read from one edge of the page to the other. That gets to be a little bit too much for your eye. So let's just take a look at what's happening behind the scenes and how I'm creating these tables. So right here we've got our table for our testimonials, and I'll go back up here so that you can see them real quick. And you'll see that it's about a 50-50 split here between this one over here and this one over here. And I'm going to show you how to actually create this particular table and then how to adjust where this split is, how wide your columns are, how wide the entire table is, and things like that. And actually, before we go over there, you'll notice that all my tables end and begin in the same spot on the page, so it looks nice and clean. There's not a bunch of jagged edges on my tables all over the place. So let's go back to our WordPress editing page here. All right, so what I'm going to do is just recreate this table that I have here. And I'm just going to click to the right of it. I'm going to actually click Shift on my keyboard and then hit Enter. And that helps sometimes when you're working in between tables here. If you just want to make a space where there was no space here before, sometimes if you just hit Enter, it won't really work very well. So I hit Shift and Enter. And also, by the way, if you ever want to hit Enter to make a line break and just have it go down to the very next line instead of going down 2 lines, you can also hit Shift and Enter in that case. And then it'll just give you a 1-space line break instead of a double-space line break. All right, so let's find a table. Right here, we can click our button to insert a new table. Now, what I want here is 2 columns, and I just want 1 row. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to 1 row. You can actually change your cell padding and cell spacing, and this will change the amount of room in between the edges of the table and the text that you have inside. For what I'm doing right here, I don't particularly need to worry about that. And then you can actually change the border size. You can create a thicker border if you want to, but I like the nice thin borders to keep it looking clean. You can align it. And if you just leave it as not set, then some of these tweaks that we're going to do in a little bit here will tend to work a little bit better. But you certainly can center them. You can push them to the left or push them to the right. If they're not set, they're actually going to be set to the left. Now, next you've got width and height. Now, height I like to leave blank because the height of the table will actually increase as you add more content. So unless you need a very specific height and you want to try to fit your content in that height, I would just leave that alone. However, the width, since we want them all to be the same spacing or the same width across the entire web page, I've been using a width of 900 pixels. So I'll go ahead and put that in there. You really don't need to worry about the class at all. And then if you do want to add a table caption, you can click this here. Now I'll click Insert. And what I've got is a table here. And you won't see this middle line. There's no line break in here, but you can see that my cursor goes from one cell to another, and actually one column to another. So let's go ahead and just kind of copy and paste the information down into our new table. So I've got my left column, and now I can click over here and I've got my cursor in my right column. It will tend to fill up this entire thing here until you put content in this right column. And I'll go ahead and grab our right column content. And there we go. Now you'll see that this looks a little bit jumbled here, and the reason for that is that when you copy and paste images in WordPress, it sort of resets their alignment. So I had these aligned to the right. Go ahead and click that, and the alignment just basically gets stripped out, so you'll want to go in and change that again. So now we have our information in our two cells here. Let's preview this and see how it looks. All right, so we have our two sets of testimonials here, and you'll see that this one is about 50-50, like I said before, but this side is actually a little bit bigger. It's a little wider than this side. And now I'm going to show you a little trick on how to change that. It actually took me a long time to figure this out, but once I did, it was really, really helpful. So we'll make sure we're on the correct one here. Now I'm going to click anywhere in this cell, and I'll go up here. There's a button called Table Cell Properties. You want to adjust the actual width of this one cell, not the entire table together. And since we have a table of 900 pixels, and I'm just going to go with a half and half split here, what I want to do is make this width 450. So I'll go ahead and do that. We'll update that current cell, and then I'll go into the cell on the right, and I'll do the same thing. And there we go. Now if we preview this, you'll see that we have a perfect 50-50 split here, and that changed the width of our cells. Now if we go back to an earlier example, these are actually 900 pixels in width as well, but what I did was broke them up into 4 columns of 225 pixels each. And so now you see that I have 4 columns of perfectly equal spacing.